the Money is made possible by financial support from Old National Bank and Chicagoans like you. Thank you.
Good evening, Chicago, and welcome to the season finale of In the Money. I'm your host, Tamara Durbin, and on tonight, we're making this one special. Can you believe it? We've made it to the season finale already, and for the first time ever, we have a live studio audience. And we have a DJ in the house. DJ Motunes, thank you for setting the vibe. Tonight isn't just a show, it's a celebration of financial empowerment. And trust me, you don't want to miss a second of it. First, let me say this. I am beyond grateful for each and every one of you who tuned in this season. Week after week, you showed up, engaged, and took steps toward financial freedom, because that's what In the Money is all about. Not just getting money, but keeping it, growing it, and using it to build the life you deserve. And based on your feedback, mission accomplished. Now, if there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this, a quote that truly speaks to me. A budget doesn't limit your freedom, it gives you freedom. Let that sink in. A budget isn't about restrictions. It's about possibilities. It's about you being in control, making empowered choices, and designing the future you want. And tonight, we're bringing it all together with Ask the Experts, a personal finance Q&A. You've got questions, we've got answers. Some of your favorite guests from the season are back. And of course, my financial partner in crime, Ben, is here to help break it all down. But before we dive into this Power Pack finale, let's take a moment to look back at the incredible journey we've shared this season on In the Money. Roll the highlights. What should I do to take it to the next level? Should I redo my whole strategy?
For me, for people who have everything in order, I'm a real estate person. So now it's time to level up.
A mortgage is really just an instrument that financial institutions set up so that people can borrow money up front to purchase the home, and then the banks have a lien against that home until it's paid off in full.
I love the paycheck to paycheck person. I myself was a paycheck to paycheck person. You know why I was? Because I didn't create a budget.
I tell people it's actually easier to save for something than getting out of debt from something.
First thing is it really just kind of makes it as something that you can actually do. So that's really the first benefit, because a lot of times when we're dealing with helping people, they're in a position where they feel like this is impossible.
Well, it depends on what your price point is, because rent is high in Chicago. And I tell people—
Is rent going down?
Rent never goes down.
As you know me, I always recommend using your credit cards for items that you would normally pay with cash, and you pay it off as soon.
Let's talk about meal planning.
What I did was I first started by pulling out the sales ad in weekly papers. There is a trend to when things go on sale.
And so when you think about that in your financial life, that can happen at any moment, right? Yeah. And so you have to kind of prepare for those different things. Hence the reason why we have things like life insurance and
estate planning is the most responsible way to manage your assets during your disability or even your death.
People should bring all of their income and their eligible deductible expenses with them to the tax office.
To add to his plan was a portion for investing.
And I'm happy you did that,
That conversation helped me see how important it is to have a plan for my money.
My specialty is actually intellectual properties. So,
Okay, and then IP law too. Then I have to ask you to do a dad joke for our viewers. Good evening, Chicago, and welcome to In the Money. What a season we have had, and thank you guys for being on that journey. For this week's First in the Lab segment, we are taking it back to episode 1 this season to check in with our coaching guests, Kaylin Searles and Eric Sloss, and their financial coaches, James Morris and Cliff Goings. Welcome back to In the Money.
Thanks for having us back.
So, Eric, you know, you really caused a stir with the whole Uber Eats things. We're going to get to that, okay? Because people have been asking me that. So we want to start by just checking in and asking to remind the viewers what your financial goals were. So if you want to start, Kaylin, tell us what your financial goals were when we started the season.
Sure, of course. Some of my financial goals were to start a high-yield savings account. I also wanted to develop my financial literacy, just learning more. As I mentioned, I was in the building stages of my financial house. So some of my goals were to develop my financial house a little bit more in terms of financial literacy. And then I also wanted to work on generating passive income as well.
And tell us how you're doing.
Yeah, I think I'm doing really well. I was actually able to start and open up a high yield savings account. I also created my own website, and I mentioned publishing a book.
Okay, did you do it?
Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
actually published my book.
So really, listening to your goals and the coach that you had the perfect coach, because James is going to stay on top of you, and he has a blueprint based on what he's doing in his life to actually help you. So good job, good job. Okay, we're coming to this side. Okay, Eric, remind the viewers what your financial goals were and kind of where you were at the time of our show as it related to your financial house and how you're doing now.
So some of my goals were to cut my credit card debt in half, increase my savings account, limit my Uber Eats bill, and to start dabbling into stocks somewhat.
You still have
Stocks. So where I am now is that we were just talking about this, is that my Uber Eats bill is cut down drastically.
Okay.
I paid off every credit card. I've added more money into the savings account, so I'm really excited about that. And then I do have a couple stocks that, you know, Cliff and I were just talking about while we were waiting, and he's pushing me towards some bigger stocks.
Okay.
So I'm just waiting on that other shoe to drop with Cliff on the other stocks.
Okay, good job, good job. Okay, so let's talk about like the journey, because you all have done an amazing job, even in a short amount of time. Can you share with our viewers and I'll start with you, Eric, what were your biggest challenges in trying to go for and reach your goals?
I can remember Cliff and I having a conversation, and I was at work, and he was like, "You just got 15 minutes?" I said, "Yeah, I got 15 minutes. Let's hit this." He was like, "So how are you?" And I was like, I really want to go and purchase some stuff that I had been waiting on." And he just laughed and gave that look like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." But it's me. But the reminder of him being that figure to say, you can achieve better. So I decided to put me on the back burner and focus on the longer picture of making sure that I have a financial accountability, that my kids see that my family sees that. So for me, that's one of the things that really pushed me, was the facial expressions of Cliff.
I want to say this. You just said that you put you on the back burner. And actually, when you go after your financial goals, and actually, especially your long-term one with stock and investing, whether it's retirement, you're actually putting yourself on the front burner. You were actually putting your wants
on the back burner.
So that's good. What about you, Kaylin? What challenges did you face when working toward your goals, and how did you stay encouraged to keep going toward your goals?
Okay. Well, one of the things that I'm excited and happy to share is that my goals were really specific, and so I was able to meet them. However, the one that wasn't as specific is to develop financial literacy, right? Like, how do you measure that? And so one of the challenges was to being consistent. James would send me like different informational videos and like things to check out. And I would say that is something I kind of put on the back burner. So I want to prioritize just continuing to develop that and getting more knowledge as well.
Was there anything that you felt like he said that helped you to grow even further?
I don't know if I can pinpoint one moment, but I think what was so helpful for me was the consistent reminders. Did you do this? Are you working on this? What do you think about this? So that was just something helpful for me because my finance and wealth wasn't on the backside of my mind. It was on the forefront of my mind as I've been reflecting like, oh, how can I be smart? How can I continue to prioritize these goals?
Yeah. Now, what about you, Eric? Because I know you already talked about Cliff's facial expressions. Was there anything that Cliff said in your conversations that you've had with him that helped you a little bit more with overcoming that?
So yeah, it was after watching that first episode to like see it. I'm watching myself and I'm like, oh wow, it just clicked. And then hearing the knowledge of what they have and then watching episodes after that really just made me think like, get on track, do what you got to do. And then Cliff didn't hound me. He gave me freedom to do what I needed to do. And if I needed his assistance, he was right, you can call, text, or whatever. But it was more or less like, he was like the father figure that lets his kid fly for a little while. I'm gonna let you learn, but I'm gonna keep watching and checking in. So that was pretty cool of him to do that.
So let me ask the coach, let me move to the coaches. So I'll start with James, I'll start with you. What tools or strategies do you find most effective when you're trying to help someone stay accountable through a coaching process or even to stay on track with their goals?
Starting with education. So it was the educational videos, and then actually encouraged Kaylin to take a financial course with the NACA program because that's starting her for getting her pre-approval.
Okay.
Because I was always in the mindset of multiple streams of income and how many incomes can she create in this small time.
Okay. Cliff, any?
Yeah, I think
because he said you had more of a laid-back approach. So do you like?
Yeah, because I think that it's important to also understand the people that you're dealing with. So, Eric's later in his life, married. No, I'm just saying, no. I'm not calling you old, man. I'm not calling you old. He's up in age, no. But no, he's at a later stage of life where he has a mortgage, he has kid expenses, he has a wife. And so he's in a different place where he is kind of navigating, but also leading his life. And so I wanted to give him the space to do that. And so my approach was really just ask questions and to probe a little deeper and have him kind of think about some of the answers and kind of work from there. And so, but that's solely based on kind of his personality, a little bit on my personality, but also just understanding, from interacting with him, kind of how he rolls.
Yeah, because when he said what you just said, that's Cliff. So, but it worked for you guys. Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations on working toward and accomplishing some of your goals that you set out to do. I'm really proud of you guys, and I wanted you to thank you all for sharing your journey with our audience. And thank you, Cliff and James, for coaching our guests. I really appreciate it. After a quick break, we'll be joined by Terrell Wilson, financial advisor for Edward Jones. In the Money continues on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
Join us for a CAN TV special presentation. A new documentary series entitled The Audit, Black Women in Leadership, post George Floyd, followed by The Audit, a town hall, hosted by Tracy D. Hall.
I'm reminded of Malcolm X's quote about black women, the most disrespected, the most unprotected.
We are making these commitments because of what we saw happen to a black person.
And I finally felt like it was genuine. I did. You saw companies crowning chief diversity officers for the first time and elevating them to the C-suite.
We need people working inside institutions and continuing to advocate for change.
Wednesday, April 9th at 7 p.m. via CAN TV Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
Joining the conversation is Terrell Wilson, financial advisor for Edward Jones. Welcome back, Terrell.
Thank you for having me once again.
I told the people we're going to have some of our favorites back from the season, so you're definitely one of those. So
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being with us.
Awesome.
So when people start planning for retirement, what's the first step they need to take, no matter what their income level is?
Well, I think they need to first look at where they are, right? So begin to budget out and understand like what resources do they have actually for retirement, right? So whether that be an employer-sponsored plan, or maybe they're doing something like an IRA, but really looking at their entire savings ratio and making sure that they're on track for that.
Okay. Now, what are some common misconceptions that people have about retirement planning that could hold people back? Because I know one of them is, oh, I got time, but go ahead.
Aside from that one, I had someone recently say that, why should I save for retirement when I'm not even sure I'm going to live through retirement, right? And my response to them was, well, if we go by the averages and what the numbers actually show, most individuals will live into, well into their 80s. And so you still want to plan, right? You want to make sure that you are planning as early as possible and ensuring that you're saving at the right rate for you to reach your financial goal.
Let's talk a little bit about the different age brackets, because I know there's certain things that you need to be doing based on your age. So let's start with someone that's, say, less in their 20s or 30s. What are the good habits that they should be doing or advice that you would have for them starting to build their retirement?
Yeah, I think someone in that age bracket should be saving somewhere between 15 and 20% of their gross income as it relates to retirement. Okay. Right, and so they should be, enjoying the financial plan for their retirement plan for their employer, and ensuring that they are participating in that. Right, because there's free money most often that you're receiving. That most
Repeat
folks,
that,
there's free money that you're going to get. That's on the table.
Don't leave the money on the table,
right? So you want to ensure that you're participating in that 401k plan. At least at the rate of what the employer is matching you. But again, we need a total amount of about 15 to 20% saving towards retirement.
Okay, let's say someone is in their 40s.
Yeah.
40s and going toward 50s. What are some things that they should be doing for retirement?
I think at that age, you should maybe consider, depending on where you are, adjusting the amount that you're saving in that employer-sponsored plan. Right, so some folks, they start off at that 5% and they just keep that 5% consistent over the years. But in actuality, they should be increasing that so that they may be able to meet that overall financial need once they are in retirement. I think they should also think about things outside of the traditional retirement plan that is offered by their employer. And it goes to things like I shared earlier, like an IRA, whether it be a traditional or a Roth, depends on your individual situation and your tax bracket. But there should be multiple different streams of savings that's going towards the overall retirement goal for that person.
Now, what about if we have some viewers who feel like they're behind and they're in their 40s or 50s and actually starting to save for, invest for retirement? What are some advice that you have for them?
So first, I'll tell that person to breathe a little bit, right? Because I've met a bunch of folks where maybe they didn't even start, right? So they haven't even started to save and they're in their mid-40s. Then to your point, maybe they've saved very little. So I would tell them to take a step back, take a look at the budget, make sure that they understand where their money is going, account for every penny that they have, and then ensure that they're putting it in the right buckets.
Retirement seems way out in the future. So there are a lot of immediate things that typically come up. There are other goals that people have outside of retirement. What's your advice for people to balance not only during retirement, but saving for things like buying a home, paying off debt, or even funding their kids' education? What is the balance between trying to do all of those things at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's important to write those goals down, right? And have that plan in place to understand where you want to go, right? And then you need to put those goals in order. For some folks that we work with, sending their child to college so that they don't have any education expenses is of utmost importance. So we have to plan for that first. Or maybe the biggest goal is the retirement goal. So we need to plan for that retirement goal first. So I think writing it down and making sure that you have that vision plain so that you understand like which one of these items do I want to tackle first, and then begin to put a plan against each one of those things that you have as you move forward.
So let's talk a little bit to those people that are either at retirement or actually in retirement. What's the best approach? Because of course the goal is they want it to last throughout their life, as they're actually in retirement. So what's the best approach to them actually managing their withdrawals from their savings to make it last through their entire life?
Yeah. So those that are, right there in retirement or right at the cusp of retiring, I think it's important to understand your withdrawal rate, right? And so at one point it used to be you need to be doing it between 3% and 6% a year. And that may very well be true, but it just depends on your financial habits and what life you want to have when you are in retirement. So oftentimes I tell folks, that number at the end of, the number that you're looking for in terms of what should my balance be in my retirement asset, based off all of my retirement assets, that's important, but what's more important is how much money are you going to need on an annualized basis to have the life that you want to live, right? So how many vacations do you want to take? Are you buying a vacation home? Are you going to work while you're also in retirement? So all those things have to come into play when you are building out the accurate plan for you to have success, and also to ensure that money does not run out in your lifetime.
Okay, so now I'm kind of going to go to a little hard question.
Okay.
So, how can retirees or should retirees adjust their spending and lifestyle to stay financially secure, especially during our current economic times? We're hearing things about Social Security, and a lot of people, that is one of their main sources of income. We're hearing things about Medicare, Medicaid potentially being, challenged. I'm going to say challenged. Can you offer some advice for our viewers that may be trying to figure out, okay, are there some adjustments that I need to make in potential preparation if something were to potentially happen to those specific benefits?
A couple of things I think about. We have a piece that's called "Don't Play Politics with Your Investments." And what that means is essentially, there's always going to be different things that happens when an administration changes, whether it's Republican, Democrat, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. There's always going to be some changes that happens. So you don't want to play politics with your portfolio. You want your portfolio to be well balanced. You want your portfolios to be diversified. You want to be in different asset classes and in different securities as well. And so if you have those things in place and you're working with an advisor to ensure that those things are in place, your investment portfolio should be fine. As it relates to Social Security and Medicare, no one knows the answer, right? What's going to happen and so on and so forth. But what I will say is, from the historical perspective, it has not been moved, right? Social Security has not been changed in terms of being reduced or taken away from those who are receiving it. So the likelihood that would happen, I think, is maybe slim, but it can happen though, right? And if it does, then we have to plan around that, right? So if that's the main source of income, you may have to look at other alternatives to earning income while in retirement.
What's one piece of advice that you would give those that are near retirement, even starting to plan, or actually in retirement, that is, okay, this is one thing you need to do. If this is the only thing you can do, this is what you should do?
I'd say that would be ensure that you have a plan in place, right? I think planning is incredibly essential, right, when it comes to reaching your goals.
And you might need somebody to help you to do it.
I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say yes, right? I mean, because you don't know what's going to happen in the markets, but you want your portfolio to be performing at or above the rate of inflation.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Terrell, for coming back to be on In the Money for the season finale.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. On the other side of a short break, our in-house financial education expert, Ben Juergens, returns live in studio with an all-new Money Matters. Stay with us.
I'm Andy Zopp, the host of Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Every week,
We gather for insightful conversations with local journalists and community leaders as we discuss the news of the day and how it impacts the lives of Chicagoans. Join the conversation on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Joining me now for a special Money Matters is Old National Bank's Director of Financial Empowerment, Ben Juergens. Welcome back, Ben.
Thanks, Tamara. It's good to be back.
So we're doing something different today. We're doing a segment called Ask Ben and Tam.
Perfect.
All right. So these are questions that I've received over the season from viewers, and we're just going to knock these questions out.
Let's do it.
And give them our answers for these questions. So the first question is, I make a decent amount of money, but I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What's the first thing I should do to get control of my finances?
Well, if that is any of us, and we are living paycheck to paycheck, you're not alone, first of all, right? I mean, 64%, I think, of the United States adults live paycheck to paycheck. So how do we get a grasp of that, right? We've seen inflation with prices going up and things like that. And I think this is really where we have to look at that budget and say, I might need to cut some expenses. I know it's not fun. I mean, it's easy for you to tell me what to cut, but it's hard to tell ourselves really what to cut from an expense side. So I think we have to really have a hard look and saying, what do I really need versus what do I want? And to be honest, Tamara, a lot of times it's just, if I can get away with it for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I really don't miss the expense. But it's just that psychological, that when we battle those things, it's like, can I do with it? Yeah, we can probably do without it. And I think that's the first step. And then once we save the money, then we got to find a better alternative to what to do with that money. We don't want to blow it on something else.
Yeah. And I would add to that, so one of the key things I always counsel people on is to say, you need to track your spending.
Oh, you're 100% right. So I recommend, an easy way to do this is just get a spending diary. And for 1 week, just write all your non-bill expenses.
Yeah.
Because people don't know where their money goes, but traditionally, week to week, we spend the same types of money every single week. So just do it. Like that $5 cup of coffee, if I continue that every day during the work week, and I do that every week of the year, and I do it for 40 years as I'm working, that's like $52,000 of coffee. Wow. Now that's a latte of money, right?
Yes.
I know. Got to drop one.
He has them all. He has them all. He has them all. That's good, Ben. Okay, so the next question is, I know I should be saving for emergencies, retirement, and paying off debt, but I don't know where to start. What should be my priority?
I love the conversation about retirement. My big suggestion for anybody that's starting the workforce or maybe taking a new job, commit to that 10% or whatever it is day one, right? Before we get used to spending the money, right? And then, as you mentioned, every year increase it by 1%. So I think we need to save for retirement. We've got to think about the long term. Yeah. But if we do have debt, I'm a big fan of tackling that debt, but utilizing our daily expenses and monthly budgets. So when we cut those bills, for example, if I've got a car payment that I finally paid off, right? 5 years of paying a $400 a month payment. Most people, what they go do when they pay it off is they celebrate by buying another car, right? So my suggestion is take that $400 and then call your banker and say, hey, I'm finally done paying. And now the bank's going to say, do you need another car loan? I'm saying, no, Tamara, don't tell the bank I said, well, they'll probably see this. But it's one of those things to say, let's just convert it to savings. That's $4,800 a year. Go 2 years up buying a car, you got 10 grand, but then you can use that to tackle debt. But if we do have debt, I like the version where you tackle the one with the highest interest rate. Some people push the idea of tackling the smallest balance, and I get it because psychologically it feels good when we knock those debts off.
Yeah.
But as long as we're doing it one way or another, I think we're in good shape.
When I think about what's happening in our current environment, getting that emergency fund, even a little cushion if you can, is extremely important. So definitely doing the retirement, because if you do it with your job, a lot of times when you set things on automatic, you set it and you actually forget it. And actually in case, it's actually a good thing. So trying to get that emergency fund going, I would say make that a priority. Typically, people say, okay, just get $1,000. But in this current environment, I would say as much as you can, you need to get it, because we just don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, $20 a week gives you $1,000 a year, even more than that, right? So if you can commit to 20, how many of us blow $20 on something we don't need, right? So I mean, what I always say is just whatever it is, just have it automatically moved over. And what you can do on your mobile phones, every bank has this, you can rename your accounts. So don't call it 8, 5, 4, 3, 2, whatever. Call it emergency savings, right?
Yes.
And commit to that and just have your bank move it over automatically. So you don't see it, you don't miss it, you don't spend it.
The next question is, what is the best way and some strategies to rebuild your credit after a tough season?
Yeah, so many people have tough seasons, right? And credit is a thing that seems to impact, it used to not be that way. It was, if I needed credit 20 years ago, it was just to buy a car or buy a house. Now at this day, everybody pulls your credit. Employers, utility companies, cell phones, all that. So if we need to repair it, one of the best things we can do is the biggest portion of your credit is made up of on-time payments. So if that's been a struggle in the past, let's get the bills paid on time, but we got to really focus on the ones that are financed. So the only bills that are technically reported to the credit bureau are the ones that we actually finance, like car loans, student loans, home loans. The bad part is if I miss any of my other bills that aren't financed, they're going to turn them over to the collection agency and they're going to hurt my credit report. So we got to pay all of our bills on time. So if that's been a struggle. And the next piece is keeping your debts low. The next 30% is made up of, am I keeping my debt low to the limit? So those two make up 65% of your score, Tamara. And if we can do this, my suggestion, to be honest, is look at credit cards as an example. And I know people always say, Ben, I don't like credit cards. But if we use it wisely and you only buy things you would normally pay with cash, it's a good thing if you pay it off every month, and it's going to boost that score quickly.
Yeah, and I always tell people sometimes there are a lot of services out here that make people feel like you can do a quick fix to credit. I always give the analogy of credit being like a wound. If you nourish it, let it, take care of it, it will heal over time. Just do the things that you need to do, like you just said, paying on time, keeping the debt low. The credit score, the credit will start to
just don't put a Band-Aid on it, right? Make sure we heal it.
Heal it, let it heal. This is a question I get all the time as it relates to debt, okay? Are consolidation loans a good idea when you're trying to get out of debt?
So that's a great question. I think it really depends on what type of debt we got and what the interest rates are. So example, if I've got 3 loans, and one of them is 10%, one of them is 12%, and one of them is 3%, and they're going to give me a consolidation loan at 17%, it makes no sense, right? Because if you're going to consolidate, you want that interest rate to be lower than what you're already paying.
Right.
Most likely, if you're looking at unsecured debt to consolidate, a bank loan or a credit union loan is probably going to be lower than that, but you want to make sure that you're not paying a higher interest rate. Even if it sounds like your payment's lower, over the course of time, it's going to cost you more money.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to your thing because you're giving brass tacks with the interest rate. That's good. One of the things I have to tell people is psychologically with a consolidation loan, you'll consolidate all the loans. Let's say you get a good interest rate to do it. But say you consolidate them all. Now you have all these open credit cards. You have to be disciplined not to actually go back and say, oh, I'm going to just charge this one thing. Because typically if you do that, now you drive the credit card balance back up and you have this consolidated loan to pay off. So you really have to think about it wisely and be honest with yourself. Is this a good strategy for you based on your current financial habits?
100%. Maybe keep one, lower the limit so you're not tempted to spend more than you can, but eliminate the rest. If they got us in trouble, they're probably going to get us in trouble again.
This is a good question that we've gotten over the season. How can I use credit cards? Now we're going to flip it down to our advantage while staying out of debt. Could this be a good thing?
It can. So I love credit cards only if they're used for building credit. Don't buy fun stuff with them. So my kids, my oldest is 13. Pretty soon she's going to be on the credit card. And the idea is to only buy things you would pay with cash. And as soon as that statement generates, pay it off. So example, gas. I fill it up, but I don't spend it if I don't have it in the bank account, right? And every month that statement generates, I pay it off. And I have no debt. And if you think about it, if you do it every month, your on-time payments look perfect, and your debt is low, that's 65% of your credit score. But you have to be disciplined.
You have to be disciplined. And I tell people, you can use credit cards to your advantage because you can actually kind of make money, I know it's not good, off the banks. Because if you have rewards, and this is what I'm talking in the context of rewards, so if it's cash back, airline miles, airline, hotel points, if you use it throughout the year, paying it off every month, you could get free tickets.
Our Christmas was covered this year.
Yes, gift cards for your Christmas presents, so use them wisely, but they can be used to your advantage. So, Ben, we have to end with a dad joke because everyone loved the Dublin. They've been talking about the Dublin joke. So the word today for the dad joke is going to be taxes.
Okay, well, it's fitting, right? It's tax season.
Yes.
I just got my taxes done, Tamara.
Okay.
And my accountant, he was so focused on my net income. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, the alternative is just gross.
That was good, Ben. Thanks, Ben. On the other side of the break, I'll be joined by our first panel of Ask the Experts, Cliff Goings, James Morris, and Cecilia Marlowe. Stay with us.
Every community has a story, a pulse, a voice waiting to be heard. At CAN TV, we bring these stories to life, from the heart of Chicago to your living room. Join us in supporting hyper-local television. Your backing helps us cover what matters directly in our communities, unfiltered and upfront. Help tell the important stories of our communities. Become a program underwriter today.
Joining the conversation for our first panel of financial experts are author and investor Cliff Goings, author, economist, and real estate investor James Morris, and mortgage broker Cecilia Marlowe. Welcome back, and welcome to you, Cecilia, to In the Money.
Thank you.
So now we're going to actually have our audience ask the experts questions. So let's go to our first question.
Okay, so our first question is for James. I have a goal to own real estate when I become older, like you have now. Can you tell me how you did it? What advice you would give me now to prepare?
Yeah, so how I did it was, number one, having a goal and education for it. Because now there are a lot of programs out here where you don't have to have money to invest. But as we've been talking about savings, a little savings goes a long way. And if you can purchase an investment property for 3 to 5% down, the beauty about that is that property is going to pay you for the rest of your life or the time that you own the property. My investment properties serve as a bank. So I don't have to go to a bank to ask for money. I just pick a property and be like, it's your turn now to buy another property.
All right. Thanks, James, for sharing that. Next question.
Good evening. My question is for Cecilia. Cecilia, my husband and I are actually looking to purchase a home. So can you help me understand how to think about what makes a mortgage loan competitive?
That's a really great question. Thank you for that. So I always think that you should definitely shop around, right? Purchasing real estate, in my opinion, is one of the biggest purchases that we're ever going to make. So you want to be educated. You do want to know your options. And when we're comparing, we want to look at interest rate, but we also want to look at programs. And I don't want rate to scare you. So when I got in the business a couple decades ago, interest rates were 13%. Mm-hmm. So when I hear individuals talking about just solely rate, that's only one aspect of it. But bigger than rate, I think we have to focus on what am I comfortable with on a monthly basis, right? Because if I can fit with whatever that housing payment is in my monthly budget, everything else kind of works itself out.
Thank you. And I do want you, because when I talked to you earlier, you talked about interest rates, because there's a thing out here about, when we had the 3% rate. Can you tell the viewers what you said about the 3% rate?
Fake news, fake rates. We were in a fake market, right? During COVID, the reality was that we were all stuck in the house. Mm-hmm. And so in order to keep the economy going, interest rates went down. People were buying real estate on their phones, literally, because sellers didn't want people in their houses, and buyers, quite frankly, didn't want to go into other people's homes. And so in order to keep the real estate market afloat, we had to lower interest rates, right? But what that did was then create a frenzy in terms of the prices increasing. So now we have to figure out what's the affordability gap, and that's kind of where we sit in the marketplace today. Because if you did buy a home during that time, the reality is you're not trying to give up your 3-4% interest rate, right? And if you feel like you missed the boat during that time, you're like 6%, 7%. But the reality is, if we look at interest rates historically over time, around 6% is generally where they lie. So don't be afraid of the rate, but pay more attention to the budget and what you are looking at paying on a monthly basis. But unfortunately, that wasn't real.
Next question.
Good evening. This question is for either Cliff or James. If I am going through a financial emergency, is there a priority in which bills I need to pay to stay afloat?
Financial emergency. I would say one, you definitely want to pay any critical bills if you think about your house. I would actually, in some cases, put a car there, right? It depends on if you're using that to get back and forth to work. Any kind of crucial things around utilities, things of that nature, you definitely want to pay all those critical bills. To the extent that you can try to keep kind of, as we talked about credit reports and things of that, if you can pay minimums on bills that you have, you should do that as well. And if you have other bills, potentially you could do partial pay. So what you want to do is stay current and stay in good graces. You don't want to just have a stack of bills on the table that you're ignoring. I know that's an old reference now because everything's on the phone. But the idea is you don't want to ignore everything, but you definitely want to pay your critical things first.
Okay, good.
Hello, my question is about savings. So I don't have a problem with saving. However, things come up and then I dip a little bit into my savings. So what can I do to make sure that I do not go into my savings and I continue to build up my savings?
This is one of my favorite ones. Here's the thing, reality, something always comes up. And so I believe you should have a something comes up part of your budget. So as you think about your budget, you want to have kind of this untitled part of your budget to actually be able to use that for those things that come up. And you want to use your emergencies for real emergencies. And so it's another line item, but you got to have that, something comes up line item to me.
Good evening. This question is for Cecilia. With interest rates going up and down, should I buy now or wait? How do I know when is the right time to lock in a mortgage?
That's a really great question as well. So I personally believe that whenever you are financially in a position, that means you have the credit, the income, and the assets to move forward with the purchase, then that's when it's time for you to do it, right? Because the reality is rent prices are going to keep going up. If I'm the landlord and my taxes go up, guess what's going up? Your rent, right? And so we want to make sure that we're actually in the position to qualify for the mortgage. And then once I've been able to qualify for that mortgage, then you go for it. I always tell people, don't wait for interest rates to lower, because they may not. We just don't have a crystal ball around that. However, we can, as I think James said, we can always leverage the real estate that we have. So when you're ready, credit, income, assets, CIA, that's when you purchase.
Okay, thank you.
My question is for James. Speaking about leveraging the assets that you already have, it seems like a lot of work. So can you explain the realities of being a landlord?
Yeah, it is. It's not a lot of work if you have a team and if you educate it. It's hard for people who don't treat it as a business. And one of my sayings is I don't do favors, I do business. So I remove all the emotions out of it. And that property really has to take care of my family. And that's the reason why I purchased it. So what may be hard to someone else is worthy and valuable for me. And that's how I try to address every investment.
Well, thank you all for being on this panel and giving our viewers your expertise and answering those viewer questions. On the other side of the break, we will have our second panel of Ask the Experts with financial advisor Terrell Wilson and attorney Tiffany Powell. Stay with us.
For more than 40 years, CAN TV has been Chicago's voice, your voice. We've shared your stories, amplified your concerns, and celebrated your triumphs. Now we want to hear from you. What programs matter most? What issues should we cover? How can we better serve your community? Visit cantv.org/feedback today. CAN TV. Experience the power of community television.
Joining the conversation for our second panel of financial experts are financial advisor Terrell Wilson and estate planning attorney Tiffany Powell. Welcome back to In the Money.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So we're continuing our questions with our viewer questions and our audience questions. So let's go to our first question.
This question is for Attorney Powell. I have a life insurance policy. Does that automatically go to my family, or do I need to include it in my will?
Awesome question.
When we're talking about life insurance policy, the beneficiary designations control. So you get to determine whether or not you want to name an individual, or you can name a person to receive it through one of your different estate planning vehicles. Most often that could be a revocable living trust. But you get to choose, and the beneficiary designations control. So if you name nothing, then it would go to your estate, and depending upon the value of that life insurance policy, you may find yourself in probate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my question is for Attorney Powell also. What happens if I die without a will? Does my family automatically receive my assets, or does the government take over?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, when you pass away without a will, that's called dying intestate. And so then we go to look at the Illinois Probate Act to determine who will inherit those assets. So in that process, you may or may not need to go to probate depending upon the assets that remain in your estate. And what I mean remain within your estate, those will be assets left in your name without a beneficiary designation that exceeds $100,000. For example, if you died and you did not have a will and you left a house, then you would need probate because someone will need to sign the documents to sell the house or to transfer it to your heirs. You're no longer here, so we need to get the authority from the probate court in order to transfer that asset. But if you left a bank account and only had $50,000 in it and you named a beneficiary, then that money would pass to the beneficiary outside of your estate, so it would not require probate action. So whenever someone is passing away, it is very important to meet with a professional who handles probate matters so that they can properly guide you into whether or not you need probate or need to deal with it in another manner. Great question. Thank you.
I have a question for Attorney Powell, similarly along the same lines. I don't have a lot of assets, but I do have a lot of kids. Do I still need a will or a trust, and what's the difference?
That is a great question as well. Well, when you have children, it could be a hybrid approach. So sometimes when you say I don't have a lot of assets, that could mean you have a house or just some bank accounts. It all depends. But when it comes to children, it depends on what you're leaving them. If they are minor children, then a trust could be a better vehicle for you because you have greater control. If they're adult children, then it could be a will. So what's the difference? A will takes effect at death, which means you have to be gone before those assets can be distributed. A trust takes effect immediately upon execution through disability, through death, and it gives you greater control over those assets. For example, I have minor children. So in my trust, I can put another trust inside of it to make sure money is set aside for those children for education. If they want to travel abroad, paying for a wedding or starting a business, all of that can happen within a trust. The reason why people often choose a trust versus a will is one, a will has to go to probate, and two, a trust is private. So in the private documents, you have greater leverage to be able to manage your personal ideas and goals for your families, whereas you get a little bit more limited with the will, because remember, a will is just like handling your business. You're going to probate to get the authority to collect the assets, pay the debts, and make final distributions as outlined in a will. That's what it's there for. With the trust, it can have greater longevity and much more flexibility.
Thank you.
My question is for Terrell. Okay. Investing seems risky, and I don't have a lot of money to waste. So what's a safe way to start investing that won't keep me up at night?
So I think that's an incredibly good question to ask. A couple of things you can consider is number one, maybe starting off investing in a high yield savings account, especially for that emergency fund, right? Having those assets there, I think is the best place to have it. But you do need to step out and launch out just a little bit, right, into the market and begin to invest in the market as well. I think one of the easiest ways to do that is doing something like an S&P 500 ETF. Right, where you're not just focusing on one stock position, which could be a greater risk than actually having a basket of stocks, which you would have inside of an ETF or maybe a mutual fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Hello, my question is for Attorney Powell. What happens to my social media accounts, digital assets, and passwords when I die? Can I include them in my estate plan?
Awesome question. Well, in some of those social media profiles and emails, they give you a legacy where you can identify someone to be a legacy account holder. And so the first step is to make sure that you assign those. If you don't assign them through those different platforms, it is a possibility that you can be locked out. So one of the biggest problems that come is that we have so many of them and that no one knows where all these different accounts are, both the ones we have open as well as the ones that are private. So you would need to start making sure that you keep the passwords and information collected. As part of the estate planning process, we take a deep dive into what you have and make sure we've recorded the critical information associated with them and make sure that you have selected your legacy contacts. But pretty much all the major social media outlets have them, even on your cell phones. So that's a really great starting point. Great question. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Attorney Powell as well. I have aging parents that don't have a will and haven't started the estate planning process. How do I start the conversation without it being uncomfortable?
That's a great question. You know what? You could actually start by being honest and say, hey mom, hey dad, as we are moving forward, we're trying to figure out how you would like things to be handled if you were not here anymore. A lot of times those conversations also start after the passing of a loved one. No different than you say, who prepared the body? You can have a conversation about how would you like your affairs to be handled. Those are great opportunities to segue in to talk about it. But I will encourage you to be patient with them because there is a very significant emotional component to estate planning that is often overlooked. So be patient. Don't try to push and force them, but be open to conversation and listening to what they say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first question that I have is for Terrell. I'm a new parent and I'm thinking about saving for my child's education. What are some steps that you could recommend to make sure that we stay on course?
Yeah, I think number one, I think a good plan would be to look into something that's called a 529 plan that can be utilized for higher education. There are other plans like Corvadell savings accounts and things like that that can be used, but the one that's most often used would be that 529 plan where you're able to save a specific amount each year towards your child's college education.
Okay, and when should I start that?
As quickly as possible, right? Well, I tell you, so once your child is born, you have the social, you have all the information. You want to make sure at that point you are able to go ahead and open up that 529 plan at that point.
Okay, great. And then my second question is, we're kind of living in rocky economic times right now. What's the best way to protect my investments when everything's so uncertain?
Yeah. Uncertainty happens, right? Especially when we're changing the hands of administrations. I'll tell you that you need to have a diversified portfolio, a portfolio that is diversified in its asset mix, and make sure that the portfolio is in alignment with your time horizon and is also with your risk tolerance as well, because you want to make sure that the investments inside of your portfolio are accurate for what your overall financial goals are. And again, like I've mentioned before, you do not want to play politics with your portfolio. You want to ensure that you have the right assets, you have the right securities that are inside there, the right plan in place, and you follow that regardless of who's in office. And then if you start to see some volatility in your portfolio, we're going to make sure that you're going to manage it, you're going to review it, but it does not necessarily mean it's time to make a change.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Attorney Powell, and thank you, Terrell, for providing your expertise today and throughout the season. We really appreciate it. It has been invaluable to our viewers. And thank you to the audience for asking your questions, but also those questions on behalf of other viewers. We really appreciate that tonight. On the other side of the break, we'll close out the show with our season finale, Money Moment. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Robin Robinson. This week in other news, I'll sit in conversation and community with former Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx. We'll talk about her legacy, the many highs and lows from her time in office, and what you need to know about holding those currently in office accountable. Kim Foxx, in her own words. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyperlocal news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
As we close out this season, I want to leave you with one final thought. The Book of Wisdom says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Let that sink in. It's easy to dream about financial freedom. It's easy to talk about what we want to do, saving more, investing wisely, getting out of debt. But talk alone won't change our circumstances. Action will. Every step you take, whether it's creating a budget, starting an emergency fund, or learning about investing, moves you closer to financial security. Even the small steps matter. Every sacrifice, every wise decision, every act of discipline brings you closer to your goals. But waiting, procrastinating, making excuses, that keeps you stuck. So I challenge you. What financial action will you take next? What will you do differently? Because wealth isn't just about what you wish for, it's about what you work for. Here are your action steps for this episode. Number 1, tell your money where to go. Listen, if you don't tell your money where to go, it will disappear real fast. That's why you need a plan, a budget, a savings plan, whatever you want to call it. Give every dollar a job before it leaves your account. Start small. Track your spending for a week and see where your money is really going. You might be surprised. Once you see the leaks, you can start plugging them and putting that money to work for you. Number 2, set up a Life Happens Fund because uncertainty is real. Let's be honest. Times are unpredictable. Prices are up, layoffs are happening, and the economy keeps shifting. If the past few years have taught us anything, it's that having a financial cushion isn't optional. It's a must. An unexpected bill, car trouble, job loss, it's not if, it's when. And when it does, I want you to be ready, not rattled. If you don't have an emergency fund, start one today. Even $10 or $20 a paycheck adds up. The goal, at least 3 to 6 months of expenses. But don't get overwhelmed, just start stacking. A little security today can save a lot of stress tomorrow. Number 3, take one step toward building wealth. We've talked about investing, home ownership, and making your money work for you. Now it's time to move. Open that retirement account. Pay off that high interest debt. Start learning about real estate or stocks. Wealth doesn't just happen, it's built step by step. And the best time to start? Right now. Listen, financial success isn't just for other people, it's for you. No more waiting, no more talking. Let's start doing. Before we wrap, I just want to take a moment to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to every expert who shared their knowledge, every guest who opened up about their journey, and to you, our incredible viewers who showed up each week ready to learn, grow, and take control of your financial future. I am so grateful to have been on this journey with you. A special thank you to my financial partner in crime, Ben Juergens, for always bringing the wisdom, and of course, for never running out of dad jokes. We couldn't have done this without you. Now, while the season may be ending, this conversation doesn't stop here. We're not going far. You can catch every episode on demand, so go back, rewatch, and keep applying what you've learned. And if you ever have a question or just want to stay connected, reach out. Email me at Tamara@moneybasicsonline.com or follow me on Instagram at IamMoneyBasics. Let's keep this community strong, engaged, and thriving together. Remember, we are on this journey together to get, stay, and grow in the money. See you next season.